ADSOWN.
From deep within the Park Hill territory. From deep within the Park Hill territory. 3835 Elm Street.
Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you live from the Dank Studios at 3835 Elm Street in Denver, Colorado. It's the Cannabis Community Project. And here's your host, Brainstorm.
Dairy Berry's recording studio, located in Arvada, Colorado, is your local recording studio with affordable rates. Mark is well experienced and will make your show, music, or any audio you have sound great. He makes our show come across the internet loud and clear every week, and he can do the same for your project or band. Take a look at Dairy Berry's recording studio or call Mark at 303-456-8216.
Under pressure, extreme.
On my way. Welcome back, Cannapreneurs. After a short time off, had to take a break, had to do some traveling around the state, out of state. It's summertime, it's just that time. So I apologize for not being weekly on the shows, but I hope you had a chance to do some back listening, catch up on some shows maybe you hadn't heard before. And of course, last week's show with my tribute to Lauren Ely, who passed away just a couple weeks ago, who I had met in person and interviewed on the show. And although we were not friends in any sense of the means, I did know her, I did meet her, she was involved with the show, so I felt the least I could do as a human was just do a rebroadcast to let it be remembered who she was and what she was all about. The Durable, or formerly known as Disposable, as you heard from the show back a couple years ago, the name was changed, company was improving, and that's just one of the people in the industry here in Colorado who you meet, and you get the chance to be involved in their lives, and that's just a good representation of how small the community is, right? The community is actually small. Even though we talk about this worldwide international cannabis community and how many people around the U.S., if you break it down to your local community of where you live within a radius around the city you're in, how big is the community? Do you go to events on a frequent basis, see the same faces, the same names, meet up with the same people? There's a reason for that, because the community is small. Community is one of those things that we think about in an abstract way, but we really need to think about it in a very literal way, like family, community. Those who are around us, supporting us, taking care of us, those who will show up at your wake and your passing, those who will say a word or two about you publicly, those who will rebroadcast your show in tribute, right? How many lives have you touched out there where if you were to die tomorrow, would the world notice? But here's the real question. Would your community notice? Because we know the answer to the world question. No, the world wouldn't notice. I mean, it's almost non-existent, the percentages of the people out there who are worldwide recognized and impacting the world. You know, the Bill Gates of the world, the people who literally around the world know who this man is, and he is literally impacting the lives of people around the world. That's almost a non-existent statistical existence. But your community, your friends, your family, your acquaintances, your associates, those you do business with, those you network with, those you just see on a frequent basis going to the same events are your community. Those are the ones we need to engage in. Those are the ones we need to embrace. Those are the ones that are going to be there to keep us strong in the hard times, right? I mean, Lauren's passing a couple weeks ago just feels like it's something that's representing something in all of it. There's so many people struggling out there, not just in an artificial way like financially struggling, but emotionally struggling. He's struggling with relationships, struggling with the world, struggling with themselves. And if you've ever been alone, like truly alone, where you have no one to turn to and talk to and get that out, those struggles can become overbearing, overpowering. So it's important that no matter what business you're in, what your industry is, that you make every day a practice of building community. So you have those around you who will be there to stay strong with, who will be there when we need to be pulled back up. We need like an Al-Anon for entrepreneurs, like a support group where our loved ones and our family members, notice how I make the distinction there. You can see what's going on in my head. Where there's a support group to understand the life of an entrepreneur and what we go through and the emotional state maybe one comes to of why they're an entrepreneur in the first place, and then the emotional state they're in as they're going through these struggles. You know, it's not easy. Can't claim to know what's going on with anybody. Can't claim to know what's going on with ourselves half the time. I mean, I struggle with these issues, as I believe most people do. We all struggle. I think there's something universally going on there on an emotional state of suffering and struggling. And at all different levels. I'm not talking about relative shit, like this person is starving in this country and you're just down and out on your luck having bad times. I'm not talking about comparative stuff. I'm talking about what goes on inside of people's souls and what makes them get out of bed in the morning. Get out of the bed in the morning. I was just talking to one of my business partners, close friend, Becca, who talked about how she spent almost a year in bed, almost unable to physically get out of bed because of depression. And how entering the cannabis industry and other aspects surrounding her life that were drastic, radical changes brought her out of that. Literally gave her the strength to get up, just to physically get up. Now think about that. As you look at the people around you in your community, what are you doing to help them? Not what are they doing to help you. What are you doing to help your community? I don't know any real answers. The only thing I know is that we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep moving on. Change is inevitable. Change will happen. Suffering is always. But we have to keep moving on. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is with our community. That support from those pushing us, constantly pushing us. Not like our best friends who sometimes pull us back because they think they're our friends, but those who push us and make us move forward. That's all I really have to say about that this week. I don't have any lectures, don't have any grand opinions or insights that I can give you. Just some thoughts and some feelings of how I believe other people are feeling because that's how I'm feeling. So let's move forward with this week's show and keep moving forward because that's the way we fight back. So this week's show, I have a conversation with Lorna Shannon from Women of Weed Street. Yes, the same Women of Weed Street that I talked about a couple weeks ago as potentially producing a podcast and putting it together, just like with Canastasia and the podcast. Here's the speed of time for business and change. Within the time I put out that last podcast, making these big announcements that I was going to have these 2 potential podcasts with these inspirational women doing these topics under the Cannabis Community Project, that has all changed. But that's okay, because we have to keep moving forward. We can't let things hold us up and stop us and make us regret what we're doing and make us double think what we're doing and do anything less. We have to keep moving forward. And the way we move forward is by just accepting it. That's fine. These podcasts aren't going to work out. But you know what? You turn around the next day and you have a good friend that says, hey, I want to do a podcast. And there you go. You just keep moving forward. So I'm going to make another announcement. Back to back. After 2 weeks of back-to-back announcements about new shows, those are nixed. Now here's another announcement. Becca and I are going to put together another podcast under the Cannabis Community Project. And we're going to do something that's a little unique. We're going to try to explore a topic that I don't think people are exploring. We're going to try to put together something that makes people not just listen for entertainment purposes, but maybe you listen to get some of that emotional connection, like the support group we were talking about. We haven't quite decided on a name, but there's a business that Becca has that is very closely related to what she's pursuing in life. It's called 424 Play. It's a party event planning business that's specifically for 420 parties and a little more intimate side of things. Becca's also a health coach or a wellness coach, where she works with people from an emotional to a physical aspect about bettering their lives. Her own story is quite inspirational as well as tearful at some points. But her health story is just as amazing As in the last year, she's lost 80 pounds. She's revived her life, her health. She's out of bed, and she is her own entrepreneur now, moving forward in a business. So these are the type of stories that we need to bring to a podcast, but we need to incorporate an audience so we can have a conversation and talk about some of these topics that may not be on the surface of cannabis per se. But there's a lot of layers of cannabis. It's not all about smoking and joking. So be on the lookout for that podcast coming up soon. Until then, let's quickly do a short-term memory flashback relapse to the episode we had with Canastasia, where we were potentially talking about putting her podcast together. But nevertheless, I hold no grudges, so let's go back and take a listen, see what it's all about. If you didn't hear the full show, please listen, click, like, share, comment, share with your friends. Tell your mother about it. And then we'll go into this week's show, where we'll learn about the women in Weed Streets. And then next week, we'll be back and we'll do it again. Grind and burn, Cannapreneurs.
My name is Anastasia Briggs, and I'm relatively new to the cannabis industry. I came to the industry 4 months ago. My background is in marketing, and I have been doing that for 5 years with a focus on digital marketing. Before joining the cannabis industry, I was a social media manager for a tech company, but then I went to the Women Grow Summit and never really looked back. I decided I wanted to work in cannabis because there's so much more I can do with all the passions I have in cannabis. However, I am able to see the benefits that it gives me to my health and my mental state, and I was able to see that immediately with my first experience with it. And so immediately I started to research what marijuana does to your mind. And then I lived in Indianapolis actually before moving here from St. Louis. I went to Indiana and then here, and that was Prohibition State, and it's very, very, you get caught with a joint and you're going to jail for 10 years. I have my vision set pretty broad, and on top of these two businesses, I have a nonprofit that I want to build, and I'm working with Women Grow. I think that one of the best questions at these cannabis networking events is, where do you come from? Because no one started out in the cannabis industry. But that's why it's so important to offer exceptional customer experiences once they are in the store. But I think that what brands need to realize is that for a customer, value isn't just how much money they're saving or spending, for that matter. Value comes from what is offered, like the selection, and it also has to do with, how they're being treated. Something that I like saying as a woman entrepreneur, female entrepreneur, it's important as a female to believe in your strengths, and I'm a nurturer. And so by me not denying that, I am a nurturer, I am sensitive, I am woman. I don't deny those traits about myself. I don't try to be something that I'm not by acting like a man in business and by outing people and by being conniving. That's not the way it is. I'm a nurturer. And so I found that I've been able to get more done by being sensitive and by caring about these things and by being so passionate in a meeting when I'm talking with Stacey Lynn, breaking down and crying because we're able to do so much, and seeing her accomplishments by her embracing that as a mother and fighting for her son's right to have a normal education, to have treatment, by her fighting for that, I'm just God, we're capable of so much. So if anybody wants to reach out to me before the next segment, please, you can add me on Facebook at Anastasia Danielle or email me at canastasiallc@gmail.com. To spell that out for you, it is CANNASTASIALLC@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast.
It's all over.
It's 2016. How long have you been thinking about getting involved in the industry? Now is the time. If you have an idea, a business, or just some comments, talk about them with me on this show. The Cannabis Community Project. It's here for you. Reach out and get on. Brainstorm at cannabiscommunityproject.com or from the website under the same name.
The women of Weed Street, wow! talking about things you don't want to do, that's definitely going to have to be a segment. So we have like all these segments that we've been talking about we want to do. So should we do another of the Women of Wheat Street intro? Yeah, she'll get goofy. This is why I brought them in. They have more personality than I do. I want us to all just like be ourselves, but just recorded. I know how goofy these two get. All right. Welcome to the Women of Weed Street podcast. I'm your host, Lorna Shannon. Welcome to our house. This is where we like to empower listeners to tell their stories. We want women to come out of the cannabis closet, and we want to connect you to your local cannabis community. Totally forgot what I was going to say after that, but I like that. Welcome to the Women of Weed Street podcast. I'm your host, Lorna Shannon. Welcome to our world. This is where we like to empower women to tell their stories and come out of the cannabis closet. Are we doing the full Welcome to Women of Weed Street with, or are you just doing the... Want to take it from the top? Want to just do that same exact thing over again, but then keep going? Yeah. It's all good, dude. I wasn't really reading off of that. I was just using a couple words that were popping out. Do you want to try it? I was only saying because you seemed inspired by the idea, and then I found exactly what you were trying to say. You want to try it? If you don't, I'll do it too. Welcome to the Women of Weed Street podcast. I'm your host, Lorna Shannon, and I'm joined here by Ashley and Leah. You're going to be hearing a lot from us about sex, drugs, and revolution, where we're going to be talking about cannabis, how to get involved in the cannabis legalization movement, as well as the legal industry out here in Colorado, where we are. And we're going to be connecting your community with the community of the community. The cannabis community. I'm thinking about how to say connecting them to their cannabis community, where they are. Welcome to the Women of Weed Street podcast. I'm your host, Lorna Shannon, and this is your weekly podcast where you can catch up on all things sex, drugs, and revolution with your local cannabis crew here in Welcome to the Women of Weed Street podcast. I'm your host, Lorna Shannon, and this is your spot where you can catch up with all things sex, drugs, and revolution here in Denver, Colorado. Okay, that's what I knew. There was something you were debating. Women of Weed Street is a community for elevating women's voices in the fight to end the drug war and the stigmas around cannabis, highlighting... That's why you don't read. Women of Weed Street is a place where we raise up the community of... Join us to find out how you can get active with the cannabis community. Yeah, join us to find out how you can get active in the cannabis community. I like that. Join us and see how you can get active and stay active with the cannabis community. It's the wrong word, but... I do want to do it again just so we at least see how active versus involved sounds. Because it just came out that way. Yeah. All right. We're broadcasting to you today from Denver, Colorado, over at Dank on 380... Numbers! One more time. Find out how you can get involved and stay active in the cannabis community. I'm going to do join us. I think part of what's tripping me up is that, I'm still thinking of how we're going to be doing it different and some other... I'm when is it? How often is it going to... I think I got one more. It's going to be great. Welcome to Women of Weed Street. I'm Lorna.
I'm Leah Oriel. And I'm
Sneaky Turtle.
Broadcasting to you today from Denver, Colorado, over at Dank on 3835 Elm Street. Join us to find out how you can get involved and stay active in the cannabis community. Finally! I feel like I actually like that one. Final cut. Thanks for listening to Women of Weed Street today. Follow us on Instagram, join us on Facebook and Twitter, and don't forget to stay happy, stay active, and stay high. Perfect. I love it.
Women of Weed Street. Wow!
This is deep, man. This is so deep.
Right, that's amazing, right?
Joseph Star Sound has set this place on fire. Burn it down entirely. Seneca T will make a sound expired. Brimstone, thunder, and lightning. Herbal Kira set this place on fire. Burn it down entirely. GG Pop will make anyone expire. Brimstone, thunder, and lightning. Essential extracts, but more shots than Neymar and drop bombs, snap arm, diddy cars, no plate arm. Babylon a figure safe. Kill arthritis and cancer and slaughter corruption. Extract artists a marksman with the THC in a them eye. Nicotine play music for the soldiers. For the youth we carry books and carry folders. And for the woman them him don't stop show love. Nicotine I turn up every program. Flashy me lots, here come the rats. Fire away gash, hit them a catch. No me not stop until Babylon crash. Them head full of gas so them pass with a march. Stop on my fingers, them run in a flash. Anything but it clean at the trash. Dust to dust and ash to ash. Joseph Star Town, I set this place on fire. Burn it down entirely. Say nicotine will make a sound expire. Brimstone, thunder and lightning. Herbal Fiera set this place on fire. Burn it down entirely. GG Pop will make anyone expire. Brimstone, thunder and lightning. Nicotine fire ever blazing. Herbal cure fire baby blazing. Essential extracts where we blazing. Said Joseph starts on play for our generation. As nicotine a step forward, he must step on Babylon. Tell them you're one. We moving forward. Joseph starts on I set this place on fire. Burn it down entirely. Say nicotine will make a sound expire. Set this place on fire.
Can you
Let
hear
me
me?
know if you have any trouble hearing me, because a couple calls that I've had now, people looked at my connection is weird.
No, you sound clear. Are you up in Boulder?
Cool. Yeah. I just got home from work. I work at the preschool. Usually my schedule kind of varies between 8 in the morning and I get out at 2 or 4, like that.
Are you a teacher or just working at a preschool right now?
Yeah, no, I'm a teacher. I'm a preschool teacher for now.
You say that for now, meaning you think you'll lose your job or you're going to just quit?
No. There's, some talk right now. I'm having a meeting on Tuesday with one of the startups in the scene, in the cannabis scene. I might be leaving my preschool teaching job to work in the industry.
Do they know kind of what you do in the industry? Or
Yeah, I'm friends with my boss on Facebook, and one morning he comes up to me, first thing in the morning, and he's just like, "Hey, I really like the way you interview people. You're really good at that." And I'm just like, "Oh, you've been peeping at my social media. I really like your stuff." So it's such a strange shift in mentality to go from New York City, where I'm almost certain that I was blacklisted on the Upper East Side once I became a cannabis activist, because I used to do a lot of childcare. Even after I left my preschool teaching job, I would make side money babysitting, and my face was all over the newspapers for New York there. I'm pretty sure I was blacklisted for the stuff I do, and out here it's just it's either embraced or it's just a non-issue,
right?
Which is even cooler to me than being embraced, because it's I know I can find stoner-friendly people anywhere I go, but to be in a place where the general mentality is just so accepting is so cool.
My preschool teacher's a stoner.
I mean, that's basically we could do the title of my interview.
That's funny. Well, that's cool. What's the job or the company that you're looking at?
Stashbox?
Oh, yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, Stash Box, not... Okay, yes. Okay, that's different.
Right, not Stash Logic.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I do the tongue twister thing with them all the time. But I mean, this is all kind of on the DL at the moment because nothing's been put on paper or anything. But I haven't told my boss yet that I'm leaving because Natasha's been traveling. So we have an appointment to talk and hopefully put some stuff on paper. And then I confidently walk into my boss's office and be like, yeah, this is the offer I have right now. And,
nice.
I'm trying to lift myself out of poverty. So.
Well, to kind of give me just a short synopsis, what's your background? Where are you from? What are you doing here?
So I'm originally from Connecticut. I was in New York for about 8 years. Made the move back in 2008, right, in the beginning of 2008, before the economic crash. And I actually worked on Wall Street, bartending and waitressing on Wall Street, right as the economic crash happened. So it was really the first time I'd ever seen a direct result of the global economy on my own paycheck and my only like way of living. Because like all of my customers at the restaurant that I worked at were like all these bankers and shit. Like I was next to JP Morgan and Chase and like all these other huge places. I just started getting really interested in like economics and finance and banking and all this stuff. And then Occupy Wall Street happened. I didn't go to Occupy Wall, but it had such a huge influence on me. And I just started really getting a little bit more interested in politics and interested in all these things. This was probably like around 2011, 2010, something like that. At the time I was working, I've been a preschool teacher pretty much my whole adult life. I'm 32 now. And so, you know, on the side, like in New York, I would bartend and waitress and things like that. The roundabout way is that I got into cannabis activism through getting interested in economics and financial reform and all this stuff. Like my first kind of fascination in politics was the economy and money, specifically money. Like how is money made and who owns the way to make it in the world. And then through getting involved in the activism scene in New York, I had heard there was this bill to support in New York to get cannabis legal. And it was kind of just like a project that my, at the time, boyfriend and I were kind of just like looking for things to do. We're really passionate about it. You know, like I use it medicinally. I've also almost been arrested for like having 75 seedlings in my house when I was growing in Connecticut. So like I have a very personal vested interest in legalization. And as I started learning about economy stuff, like I started learning about the drug war. And the more and more I got entrenched in activism, the more and more I started like sort of seeing like every single thing is intertwined, right? So it's just like, it's like at this point, I feel like I'm just responding to my environment, which is sort of like the root of activism to me. It's like I'm being affected by the global economy. I'm being affected by the drug war. I know people who are being affected by these forces. Like everyone we know, right, is somehow affected. So just become this really kind of like a calling.
Yeah.
You know? So we started Occupy Weed Street in like 2013 when we found out about the bill, the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act in New York, which would legalize it similar to how Colorado has it, like it, you know, regulated like alcohol and put all the funding that comes from that, the tax revenue into, you know, schools and reparations, getting people to prison, all that stuff. And it was just like the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen, where this one piece of legislation could actually help end the global drug war. And at that time, we had only just barely seen what was starting to happen here in Colorado. I mean, they had just legalized it, so like nothing had even really been seen yet. And yeah, so we started this group. We were publicly canvassing people to support the bill, educating people about the plant itself, you know, about hemp and all these things, and getting people to actually get on the phone and call their representatives on camera. So I'd be filming the whole thing, typically live streaming, so there'd also be like an audience online watching us do this. And that eventually the canvassing turned into public events in Washington Square Park. And that was a really interesting kind of cannabis legalization was kind of blowing up as like a thing, like it was becoming a popular thing to do in New York because there were these bills that, you know, one of them was for medical. So there was like Women Grow and all these other kind of associations started getting interested in what was happening in New York. And, you know, sort of part of the narrative that is now a part of what Women of Weed Street is about. Not just showing the differences between like the business and the activism side of things, but actually bridging the gaps and showing how socially responsible cannabis industry people, like businesses, can support the activists, because that was not happening at all in New York, you know. So I come out here and it's like this totally 180 degree difference.
But when did you start the Women of Weed Street?
So Women of Weed Street was sort of this natural outgrowth of Occupy Weed Street. Occupy Weed Street got in the news quite a bit for a lot of the public events and the just the way that we were doing things with trying to get people to call their representatives and stuff. We got really popular. So much so to the point where people started coming to our events who really weren't there to legalize cannabis. They were more there to see if they could like hit on women and try to get laid, and saw it more of as a social scene, because it became a big social scene. And the poor women, myself and maybe a half a dozen other girlfriends of mine who are all, maybe even more than 6, but like we're all different. We all have very diverse backgrounds. Some of us are women, some of us are trans, very like LGBTQ kind of infused circle of people who were really not there to be social. We're not there to try to get laid. We're there to, have an effect on drug policy. Like that was the whole point. And we started facing like sexual harassment at our own meetings. So basically all the women just kind of banded together and started calling ourselves this thing, Women of Weed Street. And we'd take little Women of Weed Street walks, and like talk about the things that were like pissing us off with these dudes like approaching us and stuff. Side note, at the time, my boyfriend at the time and I, who started this whole thing together, Occupy Weed Street, we were also working as pickup artists.
As what? Makeup? Is that what you said? Makeup artist?
Pickup artists.
Pickup artists. What does that mean?
Yeah. So like in the sort of dating industry, kind of like wingmen, but like life coaches that really teach men how to like appropriately pick up women.
Like the movie with Will Smith? Like that movie with like Hitch? Hitch? You were a Hitch-S?
Basically.
That's funny. Really?
Without all the Hollywood bullshit.
Is that a self-declared role, or did you have to get trained for that?
There's a bunch of dating clubs in New York. I went to one with my ex who he actually like learned all this stuff as a customer of this guy, a client, and then used it all on me. Got me into a relationship. And then I'm bisexual. We would go out and try to pick up girls together.
Oh, okay.
I would go to this club with him where there'd be seminars, hours and hours sitting, having a seminar filled in a classroom filled with other men. I'm the only woman, right? And then later, after the seminar, they go out and practice what they learned in a practical scenario, like at a bar. So I would attend these things just out of curiosity as a woman, being like, what the fuck are they teaching men out there? And then I actually found that this one particular club, it was called Gotham Dating Club, they were actually teaching some pretty freaking amazing ethical things that were like just really good social skills, basic body language 101, conversation skills. And the clientele base was like really diverse. Like you had a lot of foreign guys who'd come to America and they have a thick accent, or they're divorced, or someone with a disability, all these different guys, or just a young guy who's fresh out of college and is really nerdy and awkward and doesn't know how to talk to girls. And so I was just like, wow, like they're actually teaching some pretty cool stuff here. So I kind of got taken under the wing and like was their kind of like unofficial first female that went through, like I didn't get any sort of certification or anything, but I attended like, 4-day-long boot camps, and then like I'd actually go out as a wing woman for the guys. So this isn't so much of a tangent, actually. It's like why we created with Women of Weed Street. We also created this thing called Sex Ed for Stoners. We were trying to come up with a solution to a real world problem that we were facing. And so, we started applying the skills that we knew as, I had built up as a pickup coach and teaching, stoners, so-called Sex Ed for Stoners, teaching them, the basics of like how to not put your hand in front of your mouth when you're trying to talk to somebody, or like, pay attention to their body language, all sorts of things. And actually teaching them how to approach like strangers in the street so that they wouldn't come to our meetings and try to hook up. The impetus between like Women of Weed Street, Sex Ed for Stoners, and this got picked up in Playboy, this got picked up in BuzzFeed, this got picked up in Elite Daily, like all freaking over the place. And we were just like a bunch of, political activists trying to solve a problem that we were facing every week in our own personal lives. And then it really resonated with the media, especially, and with just like the general public.
That's a fascinating story. You've publicly told that story before, right?
Not as my single self in Colorado, just sort of recapping the last 4 years of my life. No, I haven't.
Are you trying to keep it not
No,
public?
No, not at all. I'm not trying to keep it under wraps. It's more just been about timing, coming out. So I guess to kind of like wrap up the story so you kind of have a good purview of what I'm doing now, the relationship that started, that basically was what started Occupy Weed Street, is now over, and I needed to get out of New York and start a new life. And Boulder was suggested to me by a million people that said it was the most healing place. And like, I have friends that basically they flew me out here and put me up for a month in their basement so I could start over. At that time, I sort of wasn't sure, like, is Women of Weed Street over? Like, I had actually just done this fantastic interview with Freedom Leaf magazine. I was in like this top 20 list with people like Jane West and, you know, Charlotte Green. Super, super honored to be part of it. And then like a month later, I moved out here and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, where's my activism going? Like I've gone almost homeless and broke, couldn't feed myself without like donations in through a GoFundMe account just to like do this work. What am I going to do now? You know? And that's when I really just got through like a couple of months of healing from the breakup and the move and just trying to adjust to the transition. And I started talking to people about the idea of reviving Women of Weed Street, but making it an actual thing, not just like a bunch of girls in this political group, but, you know, having it be like a blog with interviews and really like trying to tell more women's stories. And it just really resonated with people. So it's like, oh, maybe it's not really over. It's just changing, right?
You're a fascinating person.
I've been really, really, really looking forward to talking to you because I kind of felt like I literally just tripped over your foot on my way out the door, like blowing connection all of a sudden. I'm like, dude, I can't wait to work.
You say that, but now I'm going to have to question if that's true since you're a pickup artist. I'm going to have to question who tripped over who on that one.
Well, see, here's the thing. This is the reason why I don't immediately tell people to compare it to something like Hitch when they're scratching their heads and they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about when I say pickup. Is because of this Hollywood sort of effect and the real world effect, because truthfully there are people like Julian Blanc out there. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No.
But I mean, there are some really sadistic assholes out there who they use the skills that are given to you in quote unquote the game, and they do try to manipulate people and they try to play games, and that's not at all what it's about at all. It's like something that as a woman who is absolutely a part of a culture that I'm trying to change, right? I mean, even in the LGBT world, I mean, like where we're supposed to be all like sex positive and shit, there's still a lot of hate. All of this, I feel like teaching pickup, and it's not, I don't even really call it pickup anymore. To me, it's just good social skills. You know, but like, you know, having, not even teaching it myself, but just having conversations about it. It's like a social condom, right? Like you're able to then go out into the world with skills to, you know, help prevent sexual harassment and violence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and this is by no means the only topic that Women of Weed Street is covering. It's just the one that's on my mind a lot lately.
There's no judgment against topics, right? I mean, people talk about whatever they want to talk about. But we'll chalk that one up to destiny and say it was just perfect timing at the perfect place.
Dude, this is so, like, right in line, too, because, like, a couple of the other women within the sort of startup scene, the cannabis startup scene, you know, we've all really grown, like, so tight. It's like a freaking family. It's amazing. And, you know, we've been throwing around this idea, and I think we're getting pretty serious about doing, like, a YouTube style, like, The View for cannabis, basically. Email panel, we'll call it The Crew, Canna Crew, or something like that. And, you know, we've been throwing around all these ideas lately, so it's really cool to have another sort of media platform. Because you don't want to, cannabis, man, it covers everything. And you don't want to overload one particular space with too much all that, right? Like,
right, and that's kind of what I look at my role as being a producer in this is doing, is helping the person who wants to be the host of their show in really defining their format and refining their format so it's unique to them, unique from the industry in general, and it has a very pretty specific kind of niched in area that they're going after. So it's something that can separate themselves from the crowd, and it doesn't fall into just that general cannabis kind of, every show is a general cannabis kind of ranging topic that goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. So that's kind of what I view, you know, kind of my role as the producer is kind of helping you get to that point of having your own unique format and show, and that it's something that becomes branded uniquely. Women of Weed Street becomes
a recognizable brand, not only in name, but also in the format and what type of show you do and how you do the show, which takes time. You know, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of interaction and it takes a lot of just kind of thinking and just more time and just kind of little by little, you know, as you make a sculpture, it's not so much how much clay you put up there, it's how much clay you take away. And, and that's kind of what a lot of it is, because you bring a lot of clay to the table. So now it's just a matter of taking away everything, so what's left is something that's unique and special that can't be duplicated by somebody else wanting to start their own show. And at least if they try, it's not going to be the same thing, because it's not you, for one, and it's not you working with a network of people like me and my network of media producers that do media production. So all those things uniquely is what we're striving for. So every show has a unique signature on it. So if you're doing a show about patience and that's your thing, it's not just a general patient show that if you flip through iTunes, you're going to hear 4 or 5 other shows talking about patience. It's something that's unique and has a format that is recognizable as being you. So that's kind of what I strive for in how I produce my media. I don't just want to have a show or a channel. I want to have something that's recognizable as this is your style or your brand of doing things. I put a lot of work and effort into the shows I do because I want them to try to be unique and something different.
Oh, I listened to one of your podcasts the other day. I think you had Becca from Straight MJ Talk.
Oh, okay, yeah, just a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I love her.
Yeah.
It's just such a cool, I thought that was such a cool interview, and I definitely got an idea as to what your style is and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, she's a great connection to have too, because she's in the TV world of things and producing. So,
like, I'm so thrilled with all this feedback. Like, you're really just giving me a lot of motivation. I've been intending to do so much of this, but I haven't really had like a fire under my ass because I've been just operating on my own schedule for a while.
I do understand that.
Yeah, but it's like then you start telling people what you do. People start getting interested, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool." And then you're like, "Shit, now I got to actually do all this stuff that I just told people I'm going to do."
Exactly. That's the double-edged sword of telling people what you do.
It's the best. Yep, it's the best way to motivate,
Yes. Publicly announcing what you're going to do is good and bad. It obligates you to do what you're going to do because now other people are vested in what you're doing. But at the same time, now you're obligated to do what you're going to do because you publicly announced it. So,
but it's been the best, yeah.
Do you have a Women of Weed Street Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay.
Twitter, YouTube. We just started the YouTube channel. 2 videos on it. But
hold on. Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. What else?
and Facebook.
There you have it, Cannapreneurs. That's all I have for you this week. But make sure to stay in touch with us. Stay with us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, all the networks out there, even Mass Roots and YouTube. Make sure to follow us every week right here. Leave your comments, give us your feedback, be on the show. We want to see you every week. This is your community, so make sure to come back. We'll see you next week.